network to natural languages of human. And you can see that, for example, for the verb tenses or for the country capital, you can clearly see some relations of the primal data and your latent spaces in your neural network. However, can we find or can we enforce similar things specifically for geometric relations, such as some diffeomorphisms or some group actions into the latent space of the neural network? So in such a case where neural network can really understand these things. So one of my past work has been focusing on that is that, so this is the standard latent space of a neural network, where here the yellow blocks are actually the green circles in the previous figure. And now it's like, instead of using those scalar values to represent these features, I've been extending each of the value to a 3D vector. So for such a 3D vector, a very direct thing you can do is that, so now that you can apply group actions from this side. So you can really apply linear transformations or any other geometric transformations that can be applied to a 3D vector to this whole stack of latent feature of the neural network. And also, if you have more complex group actions or more complex geometric transformations, you can further extend these neuron representations so that the neural network can be used to express these geometric transformations. And so we've been talking about the representation space of the neural networks, and now we can talk a little bit more about the operations or the black box parameters of the neural network. So the arrows between two layers of the features are a layer of operations. So specifically for one layer of linear function, for one layer of neural network function, you really have two components. One is a linear operator, where you're applying a linear transformation to a learnable linear transformation to your features. And then followed by that is usually a nonlinear activation, where usually people use this ReLU function, which is piecewise linear, so that you have very controllable gradients. And following the geometric representation of the neural network features, what we can do here is we modify all the operators in the neural network so that they follow all these input geometric transformations. So for the linear layer, it's a direct extension to standard neural networks, where instead of taking linear combinations of the scalar values representing the features, we take linear combinations of the vector values representing the features, and this is commutated with a group action. And for the nonlinearity, we further modify the standard ReLU, which is defined on standard Euclidean coordinates, to a 3D rotational version, which is dependent on the input data. So this is like for standard ReLU function in most of the neural networks, they're like if your feature value at this layer is above 0, you keep it unchanged, which is as shown as a function here. And if it's negative, which is below 0, you clip that to 0. So here we extend it to a 3D case, which is dependent on the input data, where you learn the direction k from the input data. For anything that is above the plane defined by k, which is perpendicular to k, you keep the feature unchanged. And for everything below the plane, you clip it to the plane. So going back to our neural network, where you have all these mechanisms and the functions, how do we make the neural network geometric? This is very easy, where you change the latent representations to the geometric version, and you change the linear function into the modified linear version, and you also change the nonlinearities to that version. And in such a case, the neural network can have such equivariant properties where you can express the group actions or transformations in the latent spaces. And upon that, we also viewed a little bit more variations of the different components of the neural networks, where together form a neural network toolkit that you can replace the standard operators in a neural network. And with that, let's go back to the original problem where, for example, you train on the data on the left, which is this one is a surface fitting problem, where you have some discrete data points observed as a point cloud in a 3D space, and you want to fit this continuous surface to those data points. And so on the top, the pink one is a standard neural network, where you can see that if your data is in distribution, which you have seen this pose before, you can fit the surface very well. But if you apply a rotation to the data, the fitting is totally ruined. So for those neural networks, they really don't understand these kind of transformations. But with all the modifications at the bottom, which is a yellow one, if you rotate the data, the fitting is always consistent to your original data distribution. And here's a better visualization of that, where the yellow points are the input to the network, which are the discrete samples you can observe. and the blue surface is the one that you're fitting with the network. And this one is like, this one is not like just rotating with a visualizer, but it's really like inferring at each of the frame. So you can see it's very consistent predictions. And it can also be applied to finding that surface in a larger scene of data points, in a larger scene of the points in 3D, where we've been doing this EM algorithm with the neural network in the, I think in the E step. And here are some of the results where you have like all these points observed in 3D, and you can locate these objects as well as finding the poses of them using the geometric neural network. And going a little bit further, so beforehand, I've been talking about one of the most simplest geometric transformation in 3D space, which is a linear transformation. So how about if we have a more complex system? So one extension to this linear transformation is a multi-body system, where like you also have this two-body problem in astronomy, which a lot of people care about. So one problem in machine learning we care about is that, for example, if you have a whole, observation of the whole system, which is shown at the top, and you have no knowledge about that, can you segment the system into parts where you know, like, okay, this one, like all the data points here, their motion are the same motion, and all the data points there, their motion are the same. So can we further extend the equivariant property to this multi-body problem? And the answer is yes. So, but before tackling this problem, there's actually something hard in the formulation itself. It's kind of a chicken or the egg problem, where like if you, so basically we want to build equivariance to this system to find the parts of the, to find the parts of each of the system. But on the other hand, the group action itself is defined by how we define the parts. Because like if you know the parts, you can say, okay, all these points in this part, they move together. But if you don't know the parts, if you have a wrong estimation of parts, your network can probably make things even worse. So however, to tackle this problem, we've been formulating this into a fixed point problem. So specifically, we're saying the whole observation of the system is a condition to this fixed point problem. And we can do iterative inference on the segmentation of the system, where you start with a random initialization of the gases of the parts, and you gradually converge to a final prediction, which is consistent to your training data. And specifically under certain assumptions, like the Lipschitz assumption of the network function, the convergence and the equivariant property can be proved in such a system. So here's a clear example where on the very left is the training data we have, where you can see that the parts are under certain under certain states, which is a rest state, where the angle between the two parts are 0. And on the right are some new training, are the new test data, which are totally different from the training systems. But you can still see, like, starting with some random initializations, the network prediction can gradually converge to a state which is consistent to your training data.
Quick question.
Yeah.
The training state, so let's look at your box at the bottom left.
Yeah.
Do you have any training information that it doesn't open the other direction?
Sorry, which one? This one?
The far left. Okay.
This one?
That's the training set, right?
Yeah, that's the training one.
Does it have any, is there any information in there that instead of opening down, it opens up?
Oh, that's a very good question. So this one, we're actually assuming free motions to each part of this box. So actually, like, you can also tear it apart into two separate parts. So because like for modeling the system with a group action, like you need to assume like free motions, and this additional constraint is a little bit hard to model simply using the group actions. And we've been testing some methods to enforce that numerically, but not like really analytically.
Okay, so I guess I don't totally follow. How do you get that it always opens up in the bottom?
Oh, so your observation or input to your network inference is always a point. So all the points, like all the dot plots here, are the inputs to the network, and the network is trying to infer the colors in this. So specifically, like a probability distribution, like this point belongs to this part and this point belongs to this part. So this is a training data which contains both the observation of the points and the labels or the probabilities on top of that. And so here are the inference where you only tell the network what the points are, and you don't know the probability on that. So it's like, so what the network is doing is starting with a random probability, random initialization, and gradually do inference to converge to the final prediction.
So tech, it can go either way.
Sorry?
You could open it either way, and the program would probably do that, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And here are more examples of the inference where the, on the top are the training states, and on the bottom are the inference under different motions. And you can see the overall inference is quite consistent to the training ones, even under the state changes. And here are more examples. We've been trying to test our network with some synthetic data, which look very fake, where you put everything axis aligned and all the data are pretty clean. And we try to apply our network to inference, which are actually scanned from the actual 3D scenes. And you can see there are the scan noises, and also like the poses of these objects in the point observations are very different from the previous one, but still it can gradually converge to states that are consistent to the training data. Okay, going a little more, so we've been talking about linear transformations, piecewise linear transformations. What else can we do by enforcing geometry in neural networks? So let's go back a little bit about an overview about what neural networks can do nowadays. So in the past, like ever since the beginning of the development of deep learning, people have been trying to tackle this problem of like whether this image is in cat or dog. So it's a very high level understanding of the visual data. And afterwards, people have been trying to apply neural network to more fine-grained problems. For example, can you locate the cat in the image? So where it is, can you draw a box around it? And later, people have been trying to make it like more and more fine-grained. For example, can you analyze the image by regions? And finally, can you even understand every pixel in your data? So for example, if you have these two images, can you correlate all the pixels, or as many pixels as possible, like what is happening between these two images? And what we've been trying to do is that we want to tackle the most fine-grained problem, and moreover, we want to incorporate geometric understandings into this problem. If we look at this problem, so going back to the problem itself, it's actually asking you, okay, you have these two images on the left. What if something happened from the first one to the second one, and you want your neural network to tell you what is happening from the first one to the second one? And then most of the neural network can give you such an estimation, for example, of correspondences or the transportation of the points. However, if you ask a human to process this data for you and to describe and to summarize what's happening, a human actually will not directly give you such a low-level thing. What a human usually will answer you is the object deform. So for human, when they're trying to do this data analysis, they have some more high-level understanding of what's happening. And can we also incorporate such things into a neural network? So using something high-level to guide the process, to guide the data process of neural networks. So specifically to address this problem, we've been doing some spectral decomposition in the latent feature of the neural networks. Recall that the latent feature is a green things in the hidden layer of the neural network. So because like they're kind of forming a space, and with all these data, we can do spectral decomposition with all the features together. So specifically, this is a spectral decomposition example, which is not a neural network yet, but with a simple data case with a Laplacian Beltrami operator, where you have this Laplacian operator, which is very similar to the Fourier transform, but here is a manifold case where you have this Laplacian operator. You can take all the eigenvalues and eigenfunctions of this operator, and here are the visualizations of the eigenfunctions. And all these eigenfunctions together, they can form a function space of the data or of the manifold. And after having the spectral decomposition using the Laplacian operator, what you can do is that recall that we want to estimate the correspondences or the point mapping between two images. So now it's like with the spectral decomposition, without representing this mapping as pointwise mapping, which is like mapping this point to that point, drawing a line here to there, you can map them on all the spectral sequences using an overall functional map. And now, like one very good property here is that if you're mapping the diffeomorphism with the spectral analysis, it is actually can be represented as a linear map. So we've been trying this thing, the spectral decomposition, all the features of neural networks instead of the original signal you see as an input. So these are the latent features of a neural network, which is very high dimensional in most of the cases, but here we're visualizing the features using PCA. So we're only seeing the first three principal components here. And on the right are the spectral decomposition of these network features, where you can see that with the eigenvalues of lower frequency, here are the lower frequency ones, where are the eigenvalues of the first couple of indices, and here are the higher frequency ones. And with this spectral decomposition, we can compute the linear maps between the spectral sequences of two images. So here are the source and target images. We want to analyze what is happening between, or what is the correlation between these two images. So we compute the spectral decomposition before, and here, so here every column corresponds to one of the function bases of the source image, and every row corresponds to one of the spectral, one of the eigenfunction of the target image. And here the diagonal ones, here we're testing with different features, and the diagonal ones are usually a better matching because they're matching things of similar frequencies. And here are some visualizations. So with a functional map, how can you go back to a pointwise map? Is that you can view each point in the image as a direct delta function, and you can still map this direct delta function in the function space to a function in the second image. And by doing that, you can convert the functional map in the, on the spectral sequences to the pointwise map on the images. And here, this rainbow color is a coordinate system visualized on the source image. And here we visualize how the coordinates are mapped to the target image. And this is a baseline method with a standard neural network where you directly use the features of a pre-trained, which is a very nice neural network trained by Meta. And now this is like their method combined with our method, and you can see that by applying that spectral analysis, you can have smoother maps and you can have more consistent geometric interpretations. Specifically, here's an example I really like. So you have a red region at the neck of this bird, and you want to map the coordinates from the first bird to the second bird, and you can see that if you directly apply a standard neural network, it's very hard to find the neck here because the region is almost error zero. So you almost have no pixels for that region, leaving for that red thing. But if you use this geometric consistency, the network can somehow understand the overall mapping of the entire shape. So it's kind of understanding, okay, the red region should be something that is between the head and the body. So by doing that, you can now find the red region that corresponds to the first image. And another very important application of this functional map is that you can use it to transfer a heat map, because a lot of data annotations, they're not annotated as per point per point annotation, but instead you probably want to annotate some heat maps, like this region in the visual data represents something. So for a heat map, it's a probability distribution on your image. If you directly transfer it as a point map, it's very hard. For example, if this pixel has 0.5 probability, how can you transfer that? But the heat map itself is a function, so it also lives in the function space. So you can directly decompose the function, which is the heat map, with the basis. So you compute the basis expansion of that function, and you can directly map that function with a functional map. So by doing this, we can directly transfer a region or a probability distribution from the first one to the second one. Okay, I think here are all the works that I want to cover. And at the very end, I just want to show something that motivates my research, where people have been saying the reality of the universe is geometrical. So probably if we want to apply a neural network to understand the universe, it's better to make it also geometrical. And also, people are saying that understanding the representation of what nature is really like is important. So probably we also want to understand what the representations, which are the green things in a neural network, how they are really like. And I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Songyue. Are there any questions?
Yes.
I have maybe a silly question. So when you were showing the chairs rotating and how you could match the fit to the surface, is that a perfect match with the rotation, or is there some loss when you do the fit after the rotation, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's a very nice question. So it is a perfect match because we're enforcing that transformation already into the operators of the network. Yeah.
Another question.
Well, thanks for the talk. So related to the SO3 invariant stuff, what I've seen in a very different context, but conceptually very similar, and what I wonder is what I'm about to describe the same as what you're doing, which is taking, let's say, a large set of three-dimensional coordinates, finding some sort of principal axis system, something like that, some moving frame, and then just re-representing Cartesian positions in that moving frame, which is an inherently SO3 invariant, and then just doing everything you would do in any normal network after that. Is that equivalent to what you're doing, or are there some important differences?
That's a super nice question. So I guess like one very naive way of finding the three coordinates is the PCA methods. But usually in a lot of cases, like using PCA is a little bit more like numerically unstable. And also like I think it also depends on like for finding the principal axis, like how do you define the principal axis? Like, do you want it to be like more semantically meaningful, following the distribution of the data, or do you want it like more like numerical for this specific data point? So I think using a network to predict that is more like you're predicting some consistent coordinates of all the data. And I guess another difference is that for a certain type of data, probably it's hard for you to define what is actually the principal axis. So at least like for some of the cases, like the chairs or the tables here, I think most people will say these are the principal axis, like following the coordinate like a cube. But probably like for some more complex like geometric shapes or representations, it's also hard for you to define a consistent axis system across a whole bunch of data. So I think that's why like machine learning methods on that could be useful.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions, comments? If not, let's thank both speakers again.